Good afternoon. As you will have seen over the weekend, we issued a statement on behalf of the Secretary General in which he condemned the attack on the 2 Coptic churches in Egypt. He expressed his deep sympathies to the families and of the victims and the government and people of Egypt. The Secretary General, of course, wishes a quick recovery to those injured and hopes that the perpetrators of this horrific terrorist act will be swiftly identified and brought to justice. This morning, the Secretary General spoke to the permanent representative of Egypt to express his condolences, and he is expected to write a letter to President al-Sisi along the same lines. An update on the humanitarian situation in Syria from our colleagues at OCHA. A UN Syrian Arab Red Crescent interagency humanitarian convoy delivered life-saving assistance, including food, water, sanitation, and health supplies to 35,000 Syrian men, women, and children on Saturday in the hard-to-reach area towns of Yalda, Babila, Beit Sam in rural Damascus. Unfortunately, some surgical items were removed from the aid convoy. The last interagency convoy in the area was on May 5th, 2015, nearly 2 years ago. Meanwhile, the UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, plans to deliver matching aid supplies for Palestine refugees in the area in the coming weeks in a separate operation. The UN continues to call for unconditional, unimpeded, and sustained access to close to 5 million people who are in hard-to-reach areas and besieged locations throughout Syria. And in the city of Atabaka, in the Raqqa governorate, the UN says it's deeply concerned for the safety and protection of over 30,000 civilians following reports of military operations. The civilians remain inside the city, where they face deteriorating humanitarian health, living, and security conditions, and the city has no water or electricity for more than 20 days. The fighting and insecurity around the city is also inhibiting those who are trying to leave. We remind all parties to the fighting in Raqqa of their obligations to protect civilians under international humanitarian law. And also another humanitarian update, this time from Iraq. Our colleagues on the ground tell us that displacement from Iraq's West Mosul continues to surge, with some 17,000 people having fled the area just over the weekend. More than 280,000 people have now been uprooted from West Mosul since the military operations began that area in late February, with a total of 352,000 people having been displaced in total as a result of the fighting in both the east and west of Mosul. Humanitarian partners continue to work around the clock to keep up with daily sharp increases in displacement. There is enough room to immediately host some 36,000 people, and a further site expansion and construction is ongoing with a new camp in Hammam al-Alil south of Mosul, and that's expected to open tomorrow. And according to a joint food security report issued by the World Food Program and the Iraqi government today, more than half of Iraqi families are at risk of food insecurity and can no longer absorb any further shocks, such as conflict or increase in basic food prices. The report, conducted prior to the recent Mosul offensive, is one of the most robust technical food security studies ever conducted in Iraq, and warns of unprecedented levels of vulnerability. If you're interested, it's on the WFP website. And as you know, today the Secretary General will designate Malala Yousafzai as a UN Messenger of Peace, with a special focus on girls' education. Ms. Yousafzai is, as you know, global advocate for girls' education, Nobel Prize laureate. She will become the youngest ever UN Messenger of Peace and the first one to be designated by this Secretary General. Her designation will take place this afternoon at 3:15 in the Trusteeship Council, and will be followed by a conversation on stage between the Secretary General and Malala and youth representatives from around the world, coming from countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Syria, among others. Many of these young people are first or second generation immigrants or refugees in the U.S. The ceremony will be webcast on webtvun.org, and it will also be on the UN's Facebook page and YouTube channel. And UNHCR asked us to flag that today they called for a temporary suspension of all transfers of asylum seekers to Hungary from other European states under the Dublin regulations. UNHCR says the situation for asylum seekers in Hungary has worsened since a new law introducing mandatory detention for asylum seekers came into effect on March 28th. More information on UNHCR's website. And tomorrow at 11 o'clock, there'll be a briefing sponsored by the permanent missions of Afghanistan and Mongolia on the launch of the Amnesty International annual report on death sentences and executions in 2016. And immediately following that, at 11:30, there'll be a briefing by the President of the General Assembly, Mr. Peter Thompson, and the Office of the Mayor of New York City on the forthcoming Ocean Conference and World Ocean Festival, which will take place. Let me finish, and then you can raise your hand, Michelle. Which will take place on the 5th to the 9th of June. I expect our briefing will be slightly delayed because of the press conference. And finally, we want to say thank you to 2 more member states to the honor roll who've paid their regular budget dues in full, and that is Ethiopia and Haiti, which brings us up to... Nobody pays attention. Michelle. Oh, that's... Go ahead, Michelle.
Thanks,
79 is the answer, by the way. 79. Yes, Michelle, sorry.
Does the UN, there's some disturbing reports coming out of South Sudan today, specifically around WOW, where there are UN peacekeepers. Do you have any update on what's going on there and whether the peacekeepers have had any access?
Yes, I think following the ambush where a number of, that killed several government soldiers, we've seen an increase in fighting in WOW. That ambush, as you know, took place on Sunday. Our colleagues at the peacekeeping mission sent 2 patrols to the area today. They saw 16 bodies of civilians in a hospital, and at least 10 others were injured. 84 people have arrived at the unmissed protection of civilian sites in WOW, while at least 3,000 people have reportedly moved to a site run by the Catholic Church in town, and those are mostly women and children. We expect to have more patrols go to the area tomorrow.
Same.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about this. I saw the note to correspondence from UNMISS talking about this ambush. It's sort of implying that it began with an ambush of the Army, and then the Army fought back. But I've also seen an email from in UNMISS that the SPLA was using tanks as early as 7 in the morning on Saturday on this road to Bugari. So I wanted to know, I guess it gives rise to, like, if the UN is going to now come out and say they were ambushed, were they in fact advancing on enemy positions with tanks? And if so, what sort of is the UNMISS's reporting, I guess, procedure?
You obviously have access to emails that I don't. My sense and my hope is that the information that is verified is then reported on. I can only go with what the mission told me. If you have further questions for them and details, I would urge you to get in touch with them directly. Our concern, obviously, is for the status of the civilians in the area who are once again caught in fighting. I mean, as you said, we've already seen 16 bodies in the hospital, small increase in the number of people who are seeking shelter. So we'll have more patrols in the coming days, and as we're able to report, we shall do so.
Overall, does the UN believe that this and other incidents involve the Dinka-dominated government and its associated militias trying to conduct ethnic cleansing of other groups in South Sudan?
I'm not in a position to say that one way or another. Iftikhar.
Thank you, Stéphane. There is complete strike in Indian administrator Kashmir today following the killing of 8 civilians by Indian troops. These civilians were protesting Indian rule in Kashmir. Does the Secretary General have any comments on this?
No, I think I would refer you to what we've already said on the situation in Kashmir, and I have nothing further to add to it. Yep.
Thank you. As Stéphane, as you would have seen over the weekend, Morocco allowed the remaining 17 staff members of the MINURSO back in. So what's your comment on that, and what does the SG now expect from the Polisario?
I think we've seen all sorts of reporting over the weekend on the issues surrounding Western Sahara. I would wait for you to See, the report, the Secretary General's report to the Security Council on the operations of MINURSO, I think you will have more details in that. That will go to the Council. The advanced copy should go in the Council today or in the coming days.
Yeah, there's an email by Bulldog about...
Sorry, you speak a little louder.
There's an email sent by Bulldog about informing that she has received the green light from the Moroccan authorities for the return of the 17 members. So,
well, there's clearly a lot of emails going around the UN system that you guys are getting that I'm not getting, which is par for the course. That being said, again, I think everything will be clear once the report of the Secretary General comes out. Yep.
Follow up. There were some reports also last week that the Polisario has threatened to shoot the MINURSO peacekeepers if they tried to conduct ceasefire patrols in the areas under their control. What does the Secretary General think about that and the integrity of the peacekeeping mission itself?
Well, it's incumbent on all the parties involved to respect respect UN personnel in the area, whether uniformed or not, in the way they go about their work on a mandate of the Security Council.
I'm sorry, just a quick follow-up. The Polisario also reported that they have prevented the MINURSO from patrolling the El Krakarat area after the Moroccan forces have withdrawn
it is important
from it.
that all the parties ensure that MINURSO has full freedom of movement. Masuji.
Thank you, Stéphane. I just want to know
I'm not old enough to deserve that title, Masood.
I think old enough.
Okay.
Anyway, well, why is the Secretary General so reluctant to weigh himself on when the people are being killed right, left, and center in Kashmir? It has been going on for a long time, and every time I ask you the question, or we have asked you the question, you seem to brush it off.
I don't brush it off. I think I don't think the Secretary General has been reluctant. I think he would underscore the need for the parties to find a peaceful solution through engagement and dialogue. It's obviously an issue that he is following, and if we're able to say more, we shall be able to say more.
Has he come to grips with this issue at all?
I'm not sure what coming to grips means. I mean, I think he's very well aware of the issue. Carol.
Stéphane, first of all, I had a request. I was wondering if the Secretary General might be available to take questions after his luncheon with the Security Council.
That is a
Wednesday.
Probability that was raised with him, and we're, I think, on the right path.
Good. And so my question was about Syria.
Mm-hmm.
We heard the U.S. ambassador said there can be no peace in Syria as long as Assad is in power. I'm wondering if what the Secretary General thinks of that statement.
For us, we would reiterate the importance of the process going on in Geneva, which obviously one of the issues on the agenda is transition. What is important is that the future leadership of Syria be decided by the Syrian people themselves, as we've said since the beginning of this crisis. And again, I think we would call on all the parties to recommit themselves to the Geneva process and the political discussions going on in Geneva.
Because I think the U.S. ambassador's point was,
I
given
understand.
the chemical weapons attack, that he no longer had the legitimacy to lead that country.
I understand her.
So you're going back to the past position? I mean,
our position is unchanged. Our position is that the work needs to be done through the political dialogue in Geneva. And as we've said, the future leadership of Syria should be decided by the Syrian people themselves. Sherwin.
Steph, you might have dealt with this on Friday while we were covering the Council. Has the Secretary General weighed in private on the legality of the U.S. airstrikes against Syria?
No. As I said on Friday, we're not going to get into the issue of legality or not legality. I would refer you back to the statement.
Why is that?
That's our position at this point. Oleg, and then Edie, sorry.
Thank you, Stéphane. With the risk of military escalation in Syria, is Antonio Guterres doing anything? Is he contacting the Russians, the Iranians, the Americans? What is he doing in this case?
I think he is following the situation closely, as is his team, on the political team on Syria, led by Mr. de Mistura.
And on this separate topic, a couple of weeks ago, the Security Council called for bigger involvement of the Secretary General in the issue of DPRK. Now that there is some growing military presence over there, what is actually the SG doing now?
I have no update for you on DPRK. Edie, sorry, you've been patient.
Steph, the Security Council is taking up the political situation in Syria. Is Stéphane de Mistura going to be here? And if he is, can he stop at the stakeout to talk to us?
Yes, he is here either later this week or next week. Somebody told me, and I just cannot remember what they told me. But yes, if he's here, we will ask him to stop at the stakeout. Yep. No, go ahead.
Stéphane, on Egypt, is the Secretary General worried about the human rights situation there, especially now with the emergency, 3 months emergency laws declared there?
I think as a matter of principle, we believe that the fight against terrorism should not impede the respect for human rights. That would be my answer. Shauna.
Yeah, sorry to take it back to DPRK, but does the SG have any comment on the actual movement of the carriers into the Korean Peninsula area? Any commentary on that? Any reaction? Thank you.
No.
Nothing?
Iftikhar.
Thank you, Stéphane. Have any UN personnel visited the Syrian airport, which was attacked by 59 missiles by the United States?
No, I'm not aware that we have. In fact, I know we have no UN personnel in that military facility. Okay. Matthew.
Sure. Something else, but I wanted to ask you, on Western Sahara, you'd said to wait for the report, but I guess I just want to say this Kim Baldock email, which Intercity Press published, was directed to like many people in UNHCR. So I'm wondering what, and it talks about a code cable from Jean-Pierre Lacroix to go forward and bring all 17 people back. So I'm sort of wondering, like, is it that you know it, but she shouldn't have written that first?
She's the master of her emails. She's obviously communicating what she needs to communicate with her staff, and the Secretary General's position will be made very public and update once the report comes out in the next day or so.
Will he, by that time, confirm or deny that he's nominating Mr. Horst Kobler as
you know, whenever we have a nomination for a high-level person, there's a lot of rumors prior. The Security Council will have to be consulted, and once all that is done, we will announce it officially, and no doubt you will have the information before it is announced officially.
Just finally, on both this and on South Sudan, is it possible to get Mr. Jean-Pierre Lacroix to do a stakeout or some type of Q&A?
I'm sure Mr. Lacroix will be delighted to come meet you as soon as it is possible for him. Good day.
That's a Burundi question?
No, we're done. Thank you.